Welcome back. You're not watching the political segment on the weekend show. Earlier in the week, a lot of systems and organizations were shut down in Nigeria as a result of industrial action by the National Labour Congress and the TUC. Now, we've had different quarters of government where they have called the labor unions as being unreasonable, inconsiderate, and according to the Senate President, it amounts to economic sabotage. We've also seen the National Assembly try to propose a bill which would stop labor unions from shutting down the power grid in the country. While we understand that this may amount to national critical infrastructure like electricity needs for the country and airports, the facts before us remain that minimum wage in Nigeria at 30,000 naira amounts to about $20. The federal government proposing about $60 amounts to about $40, whereas a bag of rice costs about $70. Imagine if you have a family of 6. And what the labor unions are saying is we're considering how much it would cost to handle or take care of a family of 6, and this is including both parents and about 4 children. And so what they have proposed is about $336, which is about slightly below 500,000 naira. Why do we mention dollars in this conversation? Because a lot of what we use and have in Nigeria remains imported, and the price of fuel and the exchange rate affects almost all that we do. Now, the labor unions have suspended the strike and given the government 1-week ultimatum before they find out the next steps to take. What do we think about this, and what do the representatives of the people in the labor unions have to say about this? Joining us to have this conversation,
we have Dr. Tommy Etim Okon, who is the Deputy President, TUC. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you and good to be here.
Yeah. So could you provide an overview of the recent labor strike and what are the key demands?
Well, thank you. Indeed, let me say, it was a very tough decision to take because to some people out there, they think it's easy to call out the workers for a strike. It is not easy to call out the worker for a strike, and no union, want to, mobilize the workers on strike because it is very expensive to call a strike. But being the tool and the only language the government want to hear, that alone necessitated the reason why, the organized labor decided to ask its members to withdraw the service, and that alone shows the government that truly power belongs to the people, and also let the government also see reason that among the factors of production that labor is central. It's as a result of the breakdown in the negotiations where government became adamant with the sum of 60,000 naira, and we feel that that was not fair enough. Going by the statement by Mr. President when he assumed office and removal of first subsidy, that workers will be given a living wage. So we were working on the contest, and that is what we stand, So that premise necessitated the organized labor to call the members to, to withdraw service, for which also have a lot of impact on the economy, and government quickly realizing that there's someone that we have to continue our conversations, which we did, with all the assurances that Mr. President has promised to pay above 60,000 minimum wage. But when we begin the conversation, we realized that just 2,000 was added. And like you can see, as yesterday, we resolved that we are still, though we have brought down to 250,000 naira, and that is our position today, which we also believe that Mr. President will look into it, because if he want to walk his talk and being, a Democrat who he is, to ensure that 250,000 is approved. We've also have conversations, and we've read in the social media the position of the state governors, their inability to pay 60,000 It's not a talk that we should pay attention to, but we will address it appropriately because we've also said that any governor that cannot pay the minimum wage, have to resign because you were voted to office to cater for the people. And if the people interest is not your priority, there's no reason being there. So these are just in summary of what has transpired so far. But so far so good. We have made our position very clear. We are standing with 250,000. With the organized private sector, 65,000, 62,000 rather, and then government 62,000. So we're also believing that they are the one on the same stock because, they are all employers, and what is the role of employers to maximize profit? So that is it. But our own is standard because we base on variables, the cost of living. So if you want to say that 60,000 will be used to pay your rent, will be used for the foodstuffs, will be used to pay your utility bills, you will use for health, will be used for accommodations, for transportation, then we've put it for the public to see. And Mr. President need to also look at it, holistically to see where, he can, because in most cases he may not be aware of the happening, but with our position that will be communicated to him officially, we feel Mr. President will take a critical look at it and do justice to our positions.
Doctor, you mentioned 62 for organized private sector, 62 and 250. Can you explain that a little bit? How does that work?
Yeah, in conversation, there must be that compromise, give and take. We came in from 615,000. Don't also forget that we had variables taking cognizance of accommodation, transportation, health, food, clothes, tariff, which are the basic needs, while government begin with 48,000 that costs are worked out, and they move it to 54, the next, and then move it to 57, while we dropped from that to 494, and then decided during the technical meeting to bring it down to 360, and then as yesterday we brought it down to 250. The organized private sector in the presentation, gave us a scenario and then justify that nobody in the organized private sector has earned below 78,000. But we were surprised when they brought it to 54. And then as time goes on, then they jack it up to 60 and then also jack it up to 62 in line with the government. But we are seeing both government and both at the state or federal and also the organized private sector, they are employers. And that is why we said, well, the two employers have agreed to themselves, but we stand alone among the tripods to ensure that the right things are done. So that is just, the explanation, how we arrived at that. And why we stick to our gun that 250,000 is reasonable, because we are also very considerate, trying to also help the government to know the reality, because you cannot, use the poor to get to the top and feel that the poor are not important. You don't expect a worker to sleep under a bridge. So accommodation, especially when it comes to major cities like Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and other metropolitan cities like that, no worker, should be left to sleep under a bridge. So you take that. And of course, in a family of 6, there is no way. We have even brought it to the barest minimum, 300 naira a plate of food without meat. For one person, times 6 in the family, except they feel that it's... And when you look at the cost of price of rice today, gari today, a cup of gari today is 250 naira. So you look at it. So what do we live on? I don't want to talk about the price of bread that is going to about 1,800 to 200,000, and you don't expect the children to ask you, Daddy, where is the bread? And so, or a crate of egg that goes for 4,000 naira. So I don't want to talk about that. But I want to talk about the basics thing, which is there. Okay, do you want the workers to trek to the office? Because the cost of transportation alone, depending on where you live, you spend over 3,000 naira a day. So these are the variables and the indices we looked at it to arrive at that barest minimum, which is 250,000 naira per month, which is very reasonable because we have taken cognizance of all those basic needs, the cost of living. And we also justify it by the statement made by Mr. President that he is going to pay, in quote, he is going to pay the workers a living wage. So if that is our minimum, we feel that Mr. President can even do higher than that, because taking cognizance of what would be a living wage today, when you look at electricity tariff, how many people can on their television and even monitor what is going on, or you on your refrigerator and then be able to have cold water when you are stressed. So when we look at aggregate of this, we feel that the government needs to do even higher than 250,000 that we have put up first.
All right, we have Comrade Ben Sinopa, who is the head of media, NLC, joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Comrade.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all.
Good morning. Well done on all your work.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Well done on all your work this week.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my sister. Bless you all.
Yes.
We
saw. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. We saw in the news that the union had a closed-door meeting with the government concerning negotiations on the demands. Now, could you assess the government's response now to these demands during the negotiation process? Okay, I think we have some.
That they are not committed to this process.
Okay.
Yes. After they made one, they expect something that will uplift.
Unfortunately, I think there's a lag on the line. We'll just wait for that to be sorted out, but we'll come back to the studio while we sort out the technical.
Could you please answer that question? Because I heard shortly from the comrade that there was no cooperation.
The fact is that the good thing is that I'm a part of the minimum wage committee, so I can speak authoritatively as an insider.
Okay.
You see, where you go to negotiation table with sincerity, with commitment, there's bound to be that compromise, and the results will be there. We came in, there's always this trust deficit, between the government and the organized labor. You see the sincerity of purpose, wasn't there had been issue, and it played out during the conversation. And that makes us a little bit adamant, from the 615,000. Because even when government came up with 48,000 naira ab initio that causes of workout, we made a demand. Let us see the variable, how you arrive at. Is it for transportation? Is it for accommodation? Is it for education? Is it for health? We needed to see it so that we now see, because in our presentation, we were able to break it down, in different variables, naira and kobo, and they look at it very well. And we also raised the issue of floating of naira, that also jack up the dollar and grossly affected. And we also raised the issue of the taxation, which becomes the order of the day without looking at any other policy direction that can bring succor, to the suffering of the populace after the removal of first subsidy. We were also looking at this because no sane policy can work without strategic plan. No sane policy can work without having, your work plan, demonstrates the fact that this policy is going to work. So from the inception, they were planning to fail, because you can't announce the removal of first subsidy without putting up those, apparatus that will be a shock observer from the removal. But it was also very good because If labor have gone on strike today, whatever is happening in the economy today, a lot of people will have pointed accusing finger on labor, that if they have allowed the removal of fresh subsidy, we will have fixed the economy, we will have done X, Y, Z, and so on. But that wasn't the case. We were very strategic, in our reasoning. And today it's very clear that we were right, because we pointed out that now we had a conversation with the government and arrived at the fact that there should be CNG buses known as Rich District, and then 100 billion has been earmarked and also made available, for that project. We've not seen any. Where would the kids, because if you like, then, for instance, I can drive from here maybe to Lokoja without the kids. If I have it stuff, where would I do? So these things were not put in place. Government were not, was not ready for this. The refineries, they told us, we worked since April, November. We've not seen anyone working. So there was no deliberate action, for the masses to have the relief from the removal of fresh subsidy. As we speak, there are also, different positions from different quarters. Some are denying that government is not paying fuel subsidies. Some are saying government is still paying subsidy. What happened now? Why are you now telling us that you are owing the marketers? What are you owing the marketers for? So there are a lot of things. So when they came to the negotiation table, they came with hidden facts, and they decided that they want to show us, in one of the conversations, they said that they needed to show us some data. And we said, what kind of data? What you cannot show us, in the opening? Why are you taking us to the private? Let's discuss and get it done here. And of course, that was also another forum for heated argument back and front and so on. So in all, government have something to hide that were not sincere in the conversation and in that negotiation.
So in a now refuted disclosure, we saw this week where it was stated that according to the Minister of Finance, government has paid about 5 trillion in oil subsidy, and then the government and also the Special Advisor to the President on Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, has come out to say that wasn't true. We also saw another leaked information saying the Minister of Finance had made a proposal of 100,000 or 102
105
or 105 to the President. Once again, they've come back to say that's not true. It's either there's a problem with leaks or inconsistency with the government, which they need to fix. Before we talk about the 105, 100 and what the Labour plans to do about that, a part of the conversation which has been doubled down is electricity tariffs. When this industrial action started, two of the major demands was increased minimum wage and to revert back to 66 naira as tariffs for electricity. What's the position on the electricity tariffs at the moment?
Well, when when it was obvious that we are going on strike, just a day to the strike, don't forget the leadership of National Assembly invited us, which we went, and the Minister of Power was there, and we also put it that since they increased the tariff from 66 naira per kilowatts and to 225 naira per kilowatt without stakeholders' engagement, that the Senate should also direct the minister to immediately revise to the old price, which was our demand. The Senate President did say that they are on top of it, that the minister cannot do it now since both House and Senate have taken a decision to invite them to do that, that we should give them that benefit of the doubt. We did that. Even when we had a conversation with the government representative in the office of Secretary of Government of the Federation, we also brought that to the fore. So it was also acceptable that they are going to look at it. But what I'm saying to the extent is that we've had serials of trust deficit, the government, so hardly can we believe. And you can see from the level of inconsistency within, the corridors of power, deny and counter-deny and so on, it shows that the government have not organized themselves, to a position where they can speak authoritatively on issue. Don't also forget, there are people who are very honest in the system who want to say it the way it is. But there's also those who are in the system to suppress fact. But the truth is that, our members are everywhere. So they work everywhere. We have information everywhere. We even have information more than the government itself. Because nobody, in the chains of production, you cannot do it without a labor. And that is what is happening in the larger society. The labor is there, so we have information. So when we look at the issue of the presentation of the 105,000 naira speculated, because it was not brought before the committee, that was why we were silent about it. But that was not supposed to be, because if it has been brought before the committee, we would have said it. But it was a proposal which they cannot deny, even though they are denying it. But the document will speak for itself, and only the end that will justify the means on that principle.
So now the strike has been suspended. What are the plans for? What are the next steps for labor?
Well, we didn't suspend the strike. We only pause it. When you pause something, you still have the tendency of punching it again.
Okay. So you pause it for 5 days.
We pause it for 5 days.
Is there a certainty that by Wednesday the strike will resume if the government sticks to 62,000?
We won't believe that the government would not stick to 62,000, because it was a commitment we got from the highest authority. And I quoted, if you look at the MOU we signed, Mr. President was quoted expressively that he is determined to pay more than 60,000 naira. So more than 60,000 shouldn't have been 62,000. That is the handiwork of those who want to bring Mr. President to be in altercation with labor. No, Mr. President understands very vividly, very well, that as a Democrat, he owned his word. He gave us that his word that is going to pay living wage. And that is why we have put up the structure of the living wage to the minimum wage committee, and that should be submitted, to Mr. President. So we are also hopeful that when Mr. President receives our position, he will know of the fact that, yes, we listened to him, we paused the strike, and now we have brought our position, which is with good intention and genuine, and in line with the thinking of the government, other than those of 62,000, which even the state governor said they won't be able to pay. And you can see the high level of insensitivity towards the workers' well-being. So Mr. President owes Nigerian workers in a very high esteem. I can tell you that without mincing word, as a father, he will not do anything that will make us to go back to the strike.
Final question. If it turns out to be true, because there's also the public assumption that the president was planning to make some statement about this on June 12th, which is the Democracy Day, and Labour has now forced its hand. If at some point the president agrees for the 105,000 naira, which the government has already denied, do you think this is a fair balance going from 30,000 to 105,000 for now while they try to stabilize the economy? Do you think that this would be a fair deal?
Well, in negotiation, you have to reach a level of compromise. That is left for Mr. President to decide. We've done our bit. And again, he has to send it as a executive bill to National Assembly, because issue of national minimum wage is a legislative matter. And if that survives and the National Assembly is able to call public hearing, and there's that public interaction, and then sign into law before then, well, we'll still look at it, and then also tell Mr. President, well done, But, of a fact, we know that Mr. President would not yield to, let me say, in quote, the blackmail of 62,000, because he knows that no worker can live with that in the present social economic challenges.
Dr. Tommy Etim-Okon is the Deputy President of the TUC. Thank you so much for your contribution and your comments on this show. We will be monitoring to see how this goes, but we will have in about 2 weeks another conversation with you about the state government, because that's a separate conversation. We know we want the national conversation to end because most of this agitation covers the federal level, but we need to have a future conversation about state government. Some of them haven't even started paying the 30,000. Besides Lagos and Edo, that's increased to 70,000. Most of the other governors have even slashed salaries and they're paying 50, 60%. So we'll have that as a follow-up conversation. But our team would also be in touch with you to see how the negotiations end this week. Thank you so much for your time and contribution. And unfortunately, to our guests who couldn't join us because of technical difficulties, we'll bring you on as we go on. We'll now switch on to Abraham, who will be updating us on news around the sports world. That's all we can take on politics. See you same time next week. Over to Abraham.